Hello, everyone. Welcome to our very first episode of Tech Tuesdays. I am so excited to be here. My name is Carrie Phillips. I am the master electrician at Farmers Alley Theater. I have been working for Farmers Alley in some capacity for almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years this fall. And I've been the master electrician for, I think, 8 of those years. So I've done more than 50 shows for them. And I had this idea a couple weeks ago to share with all of you, the Farmers Alley friends and family, to share with you some of the things that you don't normally get to see. The technicians, the crew members, all of the hard work that goes in behind the scenes to produce the beautiful shows that you see on stage at Farmers Alley. So, couple things. If you want to comment, if you want to interact, you want to ask questions, you want to shower our guests with praise for their incredible design work, which, trust me, you want to, please go to this link, streamyard.com/Facebook, and give StreamYard permission to use your Facebook name. And then hopefully we'll see your questions and comments popping up down here below as we go on tonight. I guess we're ready to get into it, guys. Are you ready? I'm excited. So I figured who better for me to bring on as the first 2 guests on Tech Tuesday than 2 of my favorite people that I get to work with. First up, please welcome Lanny Potts and Jason Frink.
Hey.
Hey, guys. Thanks for coming on. I'm so excited to talk about lighting and art and maybe some life with you guys.
Awesome.
Cool.
So I guess first things first, how did the 2 of you get involved with Farmers Alley? What started you on your Farmers Alley journey?
I'd like to answer for both of us.
Okay.
I think I was down on my hands and knees crawling and begging Jason to please come to Farmers Alley. Is that the truth, Jason? You go ahead and start.
Well, I mean, we both were involved when it was just an empty storefront and there was a big pillar in the middle of the room, and from there on, and it was both kind of one of those just come down, give us a sense what you think, no big involvement, and then and then we got hooked. I mean, we both are we drank the Kool-Aid and jam.
I forgot about that pillar. So my relationship started over Chinese lunch with Adam and Jeremy, right? And then I remember too going down to the space and it was just the dirt floor, and the question came well, can we do theater in here with this pillar? And I was like, no, we can't. No.
I mean, you can, but you're going to hate it forever.
It's going to be really expensive to fix. I said, probably, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
It's going to be really expensive to fix.
So since you guys have both been involved since the beginning, do either of you have a Farmers Alley highlight, a favorite show you've worked on at Farmers Alley?
I don't know. I mean, these are all so different. I think Curious Incident was probably the most challenging show I've done there, and one of the most challenging shows I've done anywhere. And grateful to both of you who, at a moment's notice, the hang is not working. We just do everything and rehang all the face light. You guys, we got you. We're gonna. But then I think about the Late and Alone with Scott Moreau, where it was just a really sort of simple setup, but it was beautiful. I loved working with Scott. I loved working with the show, and so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to steal a quote from my good friend John Reeves, who always answers this question the same way. My favorite show is the one that I'm currently working on, and there's a lot of truth to that, because I think that as our careers continue to go on, if we're really lucky, every show has moments of greatness in it, and to And for me, probably the most memorable plays are the ones that were the most challenging. There's some like Curious Incident, right? Like there were so many hard things to figure out to make that production work. So it's memorable. I mean, I do remember, a few Good Men, which was the first show that we opened at Farmers Alley, and going over to the Civic Theater and saying, "Could I please borrow 20 Fresnels to get this show up?" Right. So there's always those kind of stories that are involved with all of our productions that we have, and those are memorable. But I do think that as artists, if we're always excited to be the show that we're working on at this moment is right now our favorite show that we've ever done, that's a gift that we give to ourselves, and I think the people that we get to work with.
Absolutely. So Kagan asked in the comments, what was the most challenging show you guys have done? Most challenging production for the three of you to pull off?
At Farmers Alley?
Yes.
Gosh, there's so many.
I know. I think the first thing that came to my mind was Cabaret.
Oh gosh, that's right. That was so hard.
Because it was in the round, it was the entire space was designed to look like part of the Kit Kat Club. Mm-hmm. So there's, audience, like pendants hanging over the audience and these big signs. And because it's in the round, the face light has to be just a specific way so that, the audience doesn't feel like they feel like they're part of it, but they don't feel like they're on stage.
Yeah, you used all those eye cues to be able to do follow spots because you couldn't do traditional. That was an amazing show.
That was great. And it's important too to remember that the production team that we get to work with also has such an impact on the work that we do as lighting designers. So, I think about working with Kathy. And the blocking with Rachel that was done on that show, Kathy said to me, "We're going to do this show without follow spots." And I said, "Okay," because the answer is yes. What's the question? So that was I remember that was one of those shows. I remember watching was it the Money video? It was the one where he kept walking her through the doors and. Wasn't that? I think that was the Money video or the Money song, and I must have watched that. I must have watched the blocking for that video. I'm not exact. At least 8 hours, to program, 4 minutes of a play. So, which is normal in the work that we do. And I think Farmers Alley too. What a beautiful space to be able to enjoy a show, but as a designer, as a technician, as a director, also a very challenging space in which to do theater.
Yes. Yeah, there's always an HVAC duct right where you need to put a special.
It's true. Is there a setup that is the easiest to light? Kagan wants to know.
Yes, when I get to go to the theater and use Jason's light plot.
Yes.
They say, and okay, it is their light plot, but I got to tell you, a lot of times, like Lanny will hand me a piece of paper with some circles drawn on it and said, "Here are my areas. Here are the systems that I want. I'll see you in a few days."
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's one of the most awesome things about working with the team that we work with down there. I mean, I think that it's really cool that you as a master electrician know how Lanny thinks and know how I think, and that you can take the same plot and you can change the patch so that when either of us sits down at the board, we don't even have to guess. Like, I know, group one is going to bring up these lights because that's the way that you've taken and adapted it. And so you're like inside our heads, which is amazing and frightening.
Look, you guys gave me that permission, so I'm going to take it and run with it. Speaking of production team and other people that we get to work with, what is the most memorable way that you have ever proposed an idea to a director or to other members of the team? Lanny, you wanna start with that one?
Sure. I mean, one of the, so we did get some of these questions ahead of time. Thank you, Carrie. I have two answers to this question. My first answer is, really every production is different. And when I think about proposing an idea to a director, I often return to the phrase, and I try to say this frequently, directors design and designers direct, right? So I hope that I get a chance to work with directors who understand how to design. So if I work with Kathy Muley on a show, Kathy Muley is the lighting designer. She's creating the stage picture. She's creating the moment. She's creating the things that need to be seen. So am I really proposing ideas to her as a designer? No, if I am, sometimes those ideas are probably more directing ideas than they are necessarily lighting ideas, right?
Yeah.
We're all working on the same thing, which is try to somehow visually tell a story. So, so my first answer is, it just depends on the show. It's very show dependent. My second response to this is I do, when I teach design, I do try to get my students to think abstractly about a play first. I think, especially in professional theater, we're so time crunched to get the lights hung, to get the plot done, to get the patch in, to get the lights focused, because the first light cue needs to be written in 6 hours. And sometimes we don't take the time to think about a play abstractly. So thinking about a play abstractly, it's like, if this play were wearing a piece of apparel, what would it look like? Right? If you met this person if this person were a play and you met them on the street, would you like him or her? If this play were a piece of music, what instrument would it be? What music would it play? And those kinds of abstract questions, at least for me, help me to communicate with the director about some of the bigger themes of a play. And sometimes I'll ask those questions, maybe not exactly the way I just said them. But, those are ideas that I toy around with.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky. I remember when I first started, I had like a 4-drawer filing cabinet that was nothing but like magazine clippings and photos and things like that. Because like when you're trying to express a concept, you need to be able to express it visually. And so now we've got Google image search, which you can be in a production design meeting and say, well, you get it, the director's saying this, and you're like, oh, so I think what you want is you want it to kind of look like this. Because if you start talking about like coming in at a steeper angle or coming and flattening it out or that sort of thing, it's you may not be able to convey what you mean. But if you grab a picture and like say like Christmas show this year, was the
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life, yeah.
Radio play, yeah.
Yeah, like we were in a production meeting, and so I'm listening to everybody talk about what it's going to look like, and I'm like, this feels like this needs to look like the Carousel of Progress in Disney World, and so I pull an image of that. I'm like, see how they lit this, and everybody's like, yeah, that's what we're going for. So amazing. Google image search is an amazing tool as a designer. I don't have to drag around a 4-drawer filing cabinet anymore.
So then how do you get your inspiration for a specific show? Is it, what the director has to say and Google image search? Like, is it really that simple?
It's not that simple, but I mean, that's the meat of it, right? Like like Lanny said, it has to come from the director. If you have the most amazing designers, the greatest costume designer and the greatest scenic designer and the greatest, prop designer and sound designer, and they're all doing their own things and they're doing it incredibly well, but they're not getting the director's vision, it's going to look like crap. Like you have to, everything has to come through that vision, has to come from that place. And then you pull on, both things you've seen and tricks you've used and things you've seen other people do and you want to steal, And that's why I go see Lanny shows.
Well, I only steal like an artist. There's a great book by Austin Kleon. It's called Steal Like an Artist. I recommend it. It's got lots of pictures. That's why I like it. It talks about, there's 10 concepts of being able to steal like an artist. But, as artists, that is how we get our inspiration. I I'm driving in my car and I look at the sky and I say, what Roscoe color would make that? Or what light fixture could I, I see sun on a tree, and you're like, well, how would you make that in the theater? And Jason said a really, I think, important thing also, which was everyone needs to be working on the same idea, right? So the reason why we keep doing Shakespeare is there's 300 themes in a Shakespeare play.
Yeah.
We're going to choose one of those ideas this time, and we're going to focus on that one idea. The next time we do that Shakespeare play, we'll focus on a different idea. But theater is all about deciding, for this theater, for this moment, at this time, for this audience, this is it. And we're all going to focus on whatever that it is. I think that's how great theater is made.
100%.
Oh, well, we've had some good questions come up in the comments here, so I'm gonna jump to something a little more off the cuff if you're ready for it. We have, how did your work change when we were at the Little Theater? How did that affect how did your work change when Farmers was at the Little Theater? Hi, Kat.
I'll respond to that. I think as a lighting designer, my work doesn't change at all. And that is that the things that make great lighting design are independent of a venue. And really, although it's hard for me to say this, I think it's also independent of the gear. Great lighting is not about the gear, even though I love it. No question about it. But great lighting is not about the gear. It's not about what you have. It's not about where you're at. Great lighting is just about communicating an idea. And you can do that with a matchstick and a candle and a flashlight just as well as you can do that with some fancy light fixture. I think the way that we communicate those ideas changes depending upon the gear venue, but the what and the why of our work never changes. At Kalamazoo College, I work in a thrust theater. At the Little Theater, we were in a proscenium theater. At Farmers Alley, we're in a often theater in the round, or some kind, or stadium theater. It's like, so I don't feel like the space has really changed the way that I think about doing my work.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because, of course, like you said, Farmers Alley changes so often. I mean, we're in the corner a lot, but we've done really deep thrust, we've done stadium, we've done in the round, and so it's always changing. I think though that the one thing for me being the Little Theater was that we got to do some of those more traditional looks that we can't always pull off in Farmers Alley Theater in the downtown space, because we don't have the high bays. We don't have a traditional proscenium theater. So it was, that part to me was fun, because there was an opportunity to pull out some of the tricks, from the trick bag that I haven't been able to use at the other space. So yeah, I mean, the meat of it's the same, and it's always changing. And even in that space where we were consistently using a rep plot and saying, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to keep this rep plot, and we're not going to vary from this, and we're going to make sure we do this. I mean, and then we do something like Spam-A-Lot, where we put people up on an 8-foot, platform. And when we weren't ready for that. Like we didn't know how we were. And so it's always changing, even when you try and keep it sort of, sane.
Yeah, that's just, I'll just throw this out there and you can go to the next question. But I think that's something, Jason, that most people don't know. And that is that when we were at the Little Theater, the light plot for every single show was pretty much exactly the same. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were obviously specials were added, or you got an 8-foot platform, and we're going to figure out how to, get light up on an 8-foot platform or not, right? But I think I bet most people don't know that the light plot for every single show that you saw at the Little Theater was exactly the same light plot. So that's a wonderful thing to think about. But it always looked different. And how did it look different? Because the show is different. The lighting designers thought about how to, tell the story and do their work. So, that was kind of a neat thing.
So the lighting inventory at Little Theater, one of the reasons it was so flexible is because so much of it was LED. So Savannah asked about some of the pros and cons of using newer LED lighting versus using traditional lighting and incandescent instruments.
Yeah, I mean the awesome thing with LED lighting, particularly when you're limited on grid space like you are at the downtown space at Farmers Alley, that or if you're limited to power like we were in the Little Theater, you could use so many options. I mean, you have basically an infinite amount of colors that you can work with. But to me, you have to be a little bit careful because a lot of times the LEDs read like LEDs. Like people see it and they're like, that color, I can tell. Like the audience may not be able to put a finger on it and say that's an LED, but they're going to know that it feels somehow a little bit unnatural, a little bit more zing than it would otherwise. And it can really play havoc with costumes and stuff because you're only picking a couple different wavelengths and you're trying to fake everything else. But you know, I think when we did $1 Million Quartet, you know, we wanted that whole show to look like it was lit, like you might light it in the 1950s or whatever. And so trying to get those LEDs to look like they weren't LEDs, that was the biggest challenge of that show. I mean, I love it, like when I get to do something like we're doing something more abstract and I can really go deep into the indigos that I can't get with a conventional lighting instrument. Like that just makes me smile. But there's challenges associated with it too when you want to get sort of those more, you know, natural looking neutral pastels and things.
Yeah, and especially like with trying to replicate, you know, something from the 20s to, you know, 60s, you know, the amber palette in an LED just really isn't there. Even really good LED lights can't quite have that. You know, you can't get Roscoe 321 out of an LED light.
Right.
Just doesn't exist. So, yeah. So I would say too. I love LED lights. I think LED lighting has really done a lot for our ability to tell a story. And again, at the end of the day, we're just telling stories. And I think as a lighting designer, especially when you're using LED lights, you need to think in your brain just as if you were using a piece of gel. You know, you don't have time to run through the color palette and say, do I like this color red or do I like that color red? You have to say in your brain, I need to see Roscoe 42 here, and I'm going to dial this light in to get to Roscoe 42 done next.
Yeah.
I mean, like here's the thing. I'm mostly using LEDs now, and this is my Roscoe swatch book, which is just sitting here in the drawer because it's never very far from me.
So Skylar had a question that popped up here asking about, what is a challenge that you overcame with lighting or any design that was thought to be impossible?
I didn't do it. You did it. I go to Carrie and I say, we're out of circuits, we're out of instruments. I need a no color backlight in this location. There's no place to put it. And I need it in channel 57. And then I go back the next day and it's there.
Well, you can thank Lanny for that. The very first show that Lanny and I worked on together, where I was one of his electricians, was Phantom of the Opera. And
she's still with me.
That was the beginning of 2012, I think. And I learned more about how to, you know, for lack of a better example, make light fixtures out of coffee cans. Then
I think we did that.
Thanks, Kagan. Carrie solves all problems. But yeah, like it, you know, I don't know. Every show has a different challenge, I feel like. And I know, I don't remember which question it was, but one of Laney's answers to one of the questions was about lighting being one of the last things that comes in. And so lighting sort of being the thing that fixes.
Right.
And Lanny, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Well, I think I'm not sure that all lighting designers would agree with me with that, but I don't really care that this is me, right? And my belief as a lighting designer is it's my job to make it work. I cannot expect the scenic designer to repaint the floor. I cannot expect the costume designer to re-sew and remake the brocade. I might be able to get the director to change blocking a little bit. I might be able to ask the makeup artist, could we change the wig or powder the nose or do something with the makeup? But truthfully, most of the problems, once you start getting into tech, it's up to the lighting to solve the problem. You have to fix it. And I think it's very important for lighting designers to have that mentality. It's your job. It's not someone else's job. It's your job. You figure it out. Getting back to Skylar's question, I think there's an impossible thing to solve, design problem to solve for every play. So I'm thinking back to what was the fall show?
Camelot.
Thank you. So, we had to make an actor appear on stage. Oh, that's right. They were on a 3.5-foot platform and they were upstage center against a white psych. Go. I mean, how do you make an actor in Farmers Alley Theater appear on a 3.5-foot platform against a white psych magically and have no one see them come on? That's a problem to solve. And I think a lot of, and we could just go show, like Spitfire, was it Spitfire Grill? We did the sky thing, right? In like 2 feet of space. There's always those kinds of things I think that lighting designers have to solve, and it's really why my favorite part of doing theater is problem solving, and I think lighting gives us a lot of opportunities to explore all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even just like I think people probably don't think about how closely we work with choreographers, like finding out not just what the feeling and the movement is, but like going to the choreographer and the choreographer saying, yeah, the arms are awesome in this, but let's not look at the feet, or like, like this is the feet are critical in this number, or we want this feeling, or, like those sorts of things. Like, we work really closely with all of the departments because we're the last one to come in, and we're sort of the wash literally over everything.
Kagan wants to know the latest night or earliest morning you have ever been at Farmers Alley.
Seriously.
Have any of you have either of you ever spent the night? I've come close, I think, but I've never actually spent the night there.
Plenty of other places, but not.
Yeah. I think the latest I've probably ever left is, maybe 1 or 2. But I will say that it's not unusual for me to arrive at 4 or 5 in the morning on Tech Saturday or Tech. I mean, that's pretty normal for me, which makes a very, very long day.
And it depends a lot on your team, because when we were doing Spamalot, there was a lot of we had scenic crews coming in, and they were coming in at 8 and working almost until go for rehearsal. So that meant that for me, the time that I had was to come in at like 3 or 4 and work until 8 when they came in, and then keep going. Because
go home and take a nap, and then
yeah, I'm one person, and you got a whole crew of people coming in. So
yeah, Lanny, I don't think Jeremy knew that you arrive at 4 a.m.
Well, I was waiting for the coffee, but he didn't bring it. So
yeah,
sometimes I arrive at 4 a.m.
So speaking of our artistic director not realizing that sometimes you guys show up at 4 a.m., is there anything else that you wish more people knew about lighting design or about being a lighting designer?
Yes, I have this one.
Fire away.
I wish people knew we didn't actually run the light board for the shows. Every time I say that I'm doing a show, I'm light design a show, like people are like, oh wow, so like you have to be there every night and push the go button or run the faders. Or that's I usually think that being a lighting designer is that you're there and you're pushing faders up and down all night during every show.
This is also a great opportunity to give a shout out to Roger Burley, who is without question the best stage manager executing light cues that I've ever worked with in my life.
True.
I don't think people understand Roger often is running the sound cues, calling the follow spots, setting up instances, running the light cues, and sometimes also running the video projections all at the same time.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
Yep.
Go make that happen.
Savannah asks, what is your one piece of advice for those interested in pursuing lighting design as a career? Or more than one piece of advice, if you have more than one.
I think what Lanny said about, just being aware, cataloging those moments, like when you're driving in the car and you see the sky and you think, wow, if I created that on stage, would it look too much? Would it look fake because the colors are too rich? And how do I do that? And I think noticing those things, looking at things, and then I think the other thing is that you have to do that nobody really tells you, or at least nobody told me, is that you have to get used to physically moving with music, not like dancing, because I can't dance to save my life. But listening to a song over and over again, and then sort of being a conductor, because that's how you have to get your curves to match that sort of feeling. And the best way to learn that, and I mean, not just learn it, that's what I do with every single show, is I listen to the music until I can sing it back, every single song, and then I do this sort of thing with it.
You play with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same thing. If I'm working on a musical, I'm listening to it for months in advance. I would say, with regards to being, thinking about a lighting designer, I've got a couple of thoughts. One is, I know that you both know this about me. I've never had a lighting design class in my life. I've never had anyone teach me. I've never taken a class, so I could be doing it all wrong. Who knows?
You're not. You're not. You're fine. Who knows?
But I will say this: like, if you want to, if someone thinks that they want to be a lighting designer, my best advice is you have to love it. Mm-hmm. You have to love it. And I think that's not true. That's not just true for lighting design. That's true for anything, right? So find something that you absolutely love and go do that, because what the world needs is more people who are pursuing their passions, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're passionate about lighting, you know what my best advice is? Go do lighting, because you'll be great at it.
Well, speaking of being great at lighting, I'm going to brag on you guys for just a minute. Both of these gentlemen won an award last year. Lanny won his third Wild Award. So now he's won awards for Light in the Piazza, for Gypsy, and for Bridges of Madison County. And Jason won the Sutton Foster Ovation Award for Best Lighting Design for Big Fish at Portage Central High School. So not only are these guys clearly wonderful human beings, you've been listening to them talk for the last half an hour, but they are both award-winning lighting designers. Yeah. And I would appreciate, as a personal favor to me, everyone who is in the comments right now, just go ahead and type in there and say, hey, Lanny and Jason, you know what? You guys are really, really excellent. And we're so glad that you get to come hang out at Farmer's Alley and do such good work for the theater. So I don't think their egos are nearly big enough. Not yet. I'm working on it. Not yet.
No, we're just
lucky us, right?
Yeah.
We get to work at Farmer's Alley Theater. We get to work with people like you, Carrie. That's how and I know that Jason feels the same way.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like, seriously, like that's there are lots of talented people out there that don't get the opportunities to work with the people that we work with, to work on the conditions we work with. I mean, honestly, working in an equity theater under the, professional equity theater, where everybody comes in, they does their job, they know what they're doing. We get things done on time, and then we go home, see our families. Like,
what?
Lanny, Kagan wants to know if you need any Swedish fish. Kagan, are you delivering? He brought his own. All right, so just a couple more questions for you guys. This one I think was one of my favorites, because I think this was one where I was most interested in the answer. So since you both moonlight as educators, Is there anything you've learned in the classroom from your students working in an educational environment that has, helped? Like, how has that affected your lighting, or how has that changed your view of lighting, and vice versa? Is there anything you've learned, from being a lighting designer that has affected the way you teach or you work with students? Pointing to you, assistant principal.
So I used to be a chemistry teacher. Now I'm assistant principal, and I think that overall, the intensely collaborative nature of theater will help you in whatever else you're doing in your life. Certainly working in education where it's very collaborative, or it needs to be very collaborative, and it isn't always. That's really intense. And from a theatrical perspective, I light shows now I lit at Porter Central and in a lot of the area high schools, and I kind of got out of that for a while, and I was working at Farmers Alley, and now I'm back doing Porter Central shows again, and it's really interesting to go back and forth between working with fall spot operators who, they just you don't even have to tell them. They already know what their target's going to be. They know what look you're going for, and it's there, to working with someone who's never run a fall spot before in their life, and you're trying to coach them to get them where they need to be. So being able to watch what those professionals do and carry that to students, and then to be able to look at theater with that, gosh, I've never seen this before perspective, and bring that freshness back to working with professionals again, I think is really neat.
Yeah, I agree. I constantly learn from my students, and I will say that one of the gifts of being able to work with students as an educator is that you get to explore your own ideas with them, and you see your students also explore those same ideas. So, the questions that I always ask of my students when they're doing a lighting project, writing a light cue, is, does the cue answer these three questions? Where are we? When are we? And how are we? If a light cue can answer those three questions and also look beautiful at the same time, you're probably doing okay work, right? But I'm going to read something that I wrote to this question, which is, I think that lighting can be complex, but what it really needs to be is simple, and less is more. Seeing the story at its most simple is the key to effective lighting. And I feel that I have the privilege of working with my students to explore that idea, every time, when I get to teach lighting design. So we are never done being a student.
Savannah asked in the comments, what is your dream show, your bucket list show that you would love to light but haven't had the chance to light yet?
Can I jump in just real quick for a second?
Yeah, totally.
Something, and I want to do a shout out, because Jeremy did a shout out to follow spot operators, and they are absolutely
yes,
a make or break thing for a show. If they do their job perfectly, you have no idea they're there, and if they make one tiny mistake, it totally pulls you out of the scene. Like, they are so critical.
And we have, like you said, some really, really fantastic ones at Farmers Alley, especially Jan and Tony and Julie. There have been a lot of us, myself included, over the last years, but yeah, they're really, really, really top notch.
And again, Roger does a great job at, like Roger knows what I want. So, Patsy Cline, and I said, Roger, I want Patsy to look like an ice cream cone. He's like, so you want her brighter on the top and darker at the bottom? I said, well, that's exactly what I want. that's exactly what he, so yeah, our follow spot operators are awesome, and Roger does such a great job at working with them.
True.
Patsy Cline was actually my very first Farmers Alley show, and I was a spotlight operator.
You did a great job, because it was beautiful.
So yeah, Savannah asked about bucket list shows.
Ooh.
I know, it's a hard one.
Well, I'm I'm envious and jealous that Jason got to light Les Mis. I've never lit Les Mis. I love the play. I would love to work on that show. There's a lot of Shakespeare that I haven't had a chance to light. I love lighting dance. I love lighting opera. Anytime someone does Glass Menagerie, I'll just show up. You don't need to pay me. Don't tell Jeremy that.
You hear that?
So I mean,
theaters out there.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. There's just some great. There's, as a designer, you don't get to pick the shows that you light, right? You just show up and try to do the best that you can for that moment. But yeah, there's some real shows that I would just love a chance to light before I retire.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's sort of like because Les Mis was probably one of my favorite shows to have lit.
And it was brilliant.
Oh, thanks. But I would love to light Rent, just because that it's a musical, but the light, what people expect from lighting is so much different than you would normally get, and I would love to hear what direction a director wants to go with that, and see, So that and the one that's just completely off the wall, and I don't know why, but because it's not that great of a show, but I just would love to light it because it sounds so much fun. Is Starlight Express? Oh
yeah, and here's my pick: Xanadu. I want to light Xanadu.
It'd be fun.
Not a good play, but I'm gonna light it.
So just a couple more. We've already gone over on the time, so why not go a little further if that's okay with you guys?
Sure. We're happy to bore people.
So our good friend Steve Van Dyke submitted a question to me earlier last week and said he wants to know what your favorite DMX gadget is. Doesn't matter if it's real or if it's fake.
So I'll start because I actually wrote this earlier. So I had 4 answers to that. So my favorite device is I just love my EOS programming wing. I was one of the first people in the United States to get it. I'm an early adopter of technology. I will repeat again, it's not about the gear, but as a programming tool, it is just fantastic to have it as either a standalone desk or as a client. And I've taken it to multiple venues, and it's just really handy. In terms of an actual DMX gadget, I do have a DMX cat. I don't use it very often, but when I've needed it, it's been super, super handy. My favorite DMX made-up gadget, for those of you that don't know Doug Fleener, you can go Google Doug Fleener and look at Doug Fleener DMX gadgets. I think every theater should own the Doug Fleener DMX shock collar. And then the question that wasn't asked is what's my favorite thing in my gig bag? The favorite thing in my gig bag is my Pentel 9mm pencil and a Sharpie marker.
If anyone ever wants to get Lanny a gift, he's very overprotective of his pencils, so that's probably a good one.
I actually can't work without my pencil. I will not work without the pencil.
Jason, what about you?
I think my favorite gadget is Showbase because it up until they came out, like reliable, cheap wireless DMX didn't really exist, and to be able to have those affordable units that we can have a handful of them, and any place we need to drop DMX, boom, we can get data to where we need it to be, whether it's inside the fake toilet or so we have a light shining out of it, and we don't really have any other way to get the data there. So that's probably my favorite gadget. In terms of imaginary ones, it's not really a DMX gadget, it's more like a light or an ETC gadget, but what I've always wanted is a clipboard that has an LED readout on it that only lists the cue number and the time. So that then, like during those later rehearsals when I'm wandering around the theater, I'm not distracted by anything else, but I can look down and say, oh, I know what cue this is, and I can take a note, and I can look and tell what the time is.
That would be really handy.
On that, or how do I adjust that?
Actually, that exists.
The clipboard?
Well, it's on the app.
Yeah, see, the app is distracting to me. I want no. I'm too much of a squirrel.
But that particular screen on the app, that's all you see. You just see you only see the queue, the description of the queue, and the timing of the queue and when it's executed, which is all you really need.
Right. Yeah, it is. That's exactly it.
So yeah. I just, for those of you that are listening, our 2 listeners that are currently online right now, what DMX stands for is a digital multiplex signal, and it's the programming language that lighting controllers use to talk to lighting fixtures and lighting equipment and that sort of thing. So it's very important in the work that we do to obviously tell a light to turn on and off. And it used to be where a dimmer would simply tell a light to turn on and off, but with fixtures that turn colors and move and do things like that, they require more sophisticated control. Interestingly, I can't remember who asked the question, but at the Little Theater, all of our DMX distribution at the Little Theater was all done wirelessly. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it was funny because like when Lanny and I started in this, I mean, we were working on, analog equipment, right? And then this digital signal.
I started with Bunsen burners.
Yeah. but like 5-scene preset manual boards, and then this standard came out. And there were 2 competing standards. One had 256 channels, and this one had 512, and that's the one that won. And I remember when it came out, all the designers I worked with, like, what are you ever going to do with 512 channels? Never. No one. Broadway maybe will hit that. Well, like we will regularly run 3-4 universes or 3 or 4 chunks of that 512 signal. So, and like you like nowadays, if Holiday Inn's going to put in a ballroom, they put like 4 universes of DMX in there, like 2,000 channels, because that's just what you need.
So putting lighting aside for a second, if someone wanted to get to know you guys outside of what's in your bio, outside of maybe even anything that you've said so far tonight, what sort of things are you guys involved with, like in your lives? How do you stay sane? How do you combat the stress of Tech Week?
Swedish fish.
Yeah.
Always the Swedish fish.
Yeah, I'm a scoutmaster, and I'm also a long distance hiker. Like that's how I clear my head. Is I will go into the woods, and my hiking partner and I will get together and we'll do 20 miles a day for 5-6 days in a row. And you get up in the morning and you walk until you're done walking, and then you go to sleep. And it's just beautiful because you only have one goal that day. And if you get to where you're supposed to be going, then you've achieved 100% of your goals, and you know that you did it. Like, and you can't do any better. Like, that's the thing with lighting, is like every show I go watch it, I'm like, I really could have cleaned that up there. Or if I would have just done this, like when I'm hiking, if I get to where I'm going, perfect.
I'm a really boring person. I don't know.
Whatever.
I like to do triathlons. I love the outdoors. I love going for hikes. I invented and built a hydroponic system for my basil that's growing right now. I really believe in serving and service. So I really believe in finding ways to give back to our community. That's really important to me. So yeah, and I love to read. I'm a voracious reader, and oftentimes the things that I love to read a lot are just like Western novels and action adventure stories, like things that are absolutely meaningless, but just take my mind off whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Cool. That's not boring. I thought you said you were boring, Lanny.
Hang around a bit longer.
So I guess before we sign off here, is there anything else either of you want to share about lighting, about theater, Kagan loves tech work.
Yeah. I'll say that thank you for the opportunity to reflect on this question. The thing that I would end with is, it doesn't matter what the work is that you're doing. Make sure that you find an opportunity to love the people that you get to work with. Mm-hmm. That is so important. When you are working with people that also love their work, they respect you and the way that you do your work, and they respect the work that they get to do. I think that I'd love to continue to grow my leadership garden. And I think that when you work with people who are gifted at leadership, you get to grow your leadership garden because you learn from them all the time. So that's probably great. That's probably great life advice for almost anything you want to do.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head, Lanny. Like, I know we keep coming back to it, but really what the strength of the theater in general, but specifically Farmers Alley, is the collaborative nature, is the joining together to make something magical. I mean, that's pretty neat to be a part of that. And you're just one spoke on a wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've heard you say quite a few times, Lanny, is that it's great to do good work, but it's better to do good work well.
Yes. I just want to give a shout out to my daughter who I just saw pop up on the comment. Mm-hmm. in Takasaki, Japan.
All right, final question. Do either of you have a favorite lighting-related joke?
So I don't have a joke. You sent this one ahead of time, and I was trying to think of it, but it's not so much a joke. It's just a funny thing.
That's a joke. All right, let's hear it.
You can tell that I work at an equity theater because when we're going to go out to eat, and I say to the kids, "We're leaving in 5 minutes," they all respond, "Thank you, 5."
As it should be.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, that's a joke in the Koch family, right? So I remember either Deneen or Jeremy was saying one morning, Deneen's getting the breakfast ready and Jeremy's, getting lunches packed, and Deneen says, "Bus in 5," and Jason says, "Thank you, 5."
It's great. It's great though, because then you know that he's heard you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't have a favorite theater joke. I think I'm the most unfunny person on the planet, but I get to work with a lot of people and hopefully in a humorous, lighthearted way, right?
Well, I brought 2, and they're not theater jokes necessarily, but they are lighting jokes, or they're light bulb jokes, guys. I'm not that classy.
Oh, okay.
So how many Irishmen does it take to change a light bulb? 2. 1 to hold the light bulb, and the other to drink until the room starts spinning. And the second one is, how many altos does it take to change a light bulb? It doesn't matter. They're just going to sit around and complain that it's too high. And before anybody in the comments gets mad at me for that one, I am an alto, so I'm allowed to say that. But yeah, thank you both so much for taking an hour out of your Tuesday evening to hang out. And it's just good to see your faces, and to talk with you both a little, and to share with the Farmers Alley community, some of just a small piece of what happens behind the scenes, and who the people are who do all of that incredible work. So thank you both so much. A couple of other thank yous to Tony for producing this evening, to Jeremy and Savannah and Julie and Adam and Rob, and everyone else who does anything behind the scenes at Farmers Alley. We love you so much. We're so grateful for you, and we cannot just wait to see all of you again, hopefully very soon. Thanks, everyone.
Takes a village. Thanks for being a part of ours.